Tonight on Bridge City News, an accident near Coaldale leaves an 18-year-old woman dead. More driving suspensions were handed out over the holiday season as Lethbridge Police released their check stop numbers. And we speak to an Alberta firefighter who's helping to save lives as he battles the wildfires in Australia.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. An 18-year-old woman died after her SUV collided with a Dodge one-ton truck on Highway 3 near Coaldale last night. Coaldale RCMP Staff Sergeant Glenn Henry explains exactly what happened.
So last night, unfortunately, at about 8 o'clock last night on Highway 3 at the intersection of Highway 512, which is about 10 kilometers east of Coaldale, just this side of the McCain's plant, we had a silver Suzuki Vitara SUV driving eastbound on Highway 3. At the intersection of Highway 512, a blue Dodge one-ton truck pulled out in front, merged onto the highway, and there was a collision. The result of the collision was the fatality of a young girl from Pitcher Butte who passed away. There were two occupants in the Dodge truck. The driver of the truck was a female, was taken to the Chinook Regional Hospital for treatment for what we understand to be non-life-threatening injuries. The other passenger, a male, was treated on scene and released.
The RCMP and Coaldale are asking for witnesses to the accident to come forward. If you have any information that can help police in Coaldale, call them right away at 403-329-5080. It turned out to be a very busy holiday season for RCMP detachments in southern Alberta, especially when it came to impaired drivers. Coaldale RCMP Staff Sergeant Glenn Henry says throughout December, Coaldale and Pitcher Butte RCMP members were involved with a few complaints involving impaired driving.
Yep, so the Coaldale RCMP on December the 7th participated in a national-wide campaign for impaired driving. We refer to it as the National Impaired Driving Enforcement Day. So on that date, we set up outside of the city of Lethbridge 3 check stops. We conducted check stops for about 5 hours, stopped about 250 vehicles. We're very fortunate that day that we only had one suspended driver detected. So I'd like to think that maybe the message is getting out there that, don't drink and drive.
The results are in from the Christmas and New Year's Eve check stops in Lethbridge. Please have an update for us.
We had 16 license suspensions, 19 vehicles were seized, 5 individuals were charged for prohibited driving, so they had a previous suspension. And 31 tickets were issued and 1 warrant was executed, and we had 1 individual that failed to stop for the check stop.
With the help of our province's scan unit, Alberta sheriffs have closed down another drug house in our city. The home located at 82 Assiniboia Way will be shut down for 90 days. Under the terms of the community safety order, crews boarded up the house, changed the locks, and fenced up the property to stop anyone from entering.
There's so many people coming and going from this property. It was easy to establish drug activity and drug trafficking occurring at the property. And within a month, we obtained a warning letter and served it on the owner who resides in this property. This house was riddled with needles. During the search warrants, they had seized methamphetamine, carfentanil, cocaine. They had seized lock picks, stolen property, credit cards, identity thefts were notable. In addition to that, there was a stolen handgun. There was a rifle in December seized from this property. The neighbors were, quite frankly, frightened. This community was frightened. There were several complainants that have taken extreme measures of putting video cameras on their homes, which of course comes at a cost. And 2 complainants had actually moved from their properties and sold them due to the activity that was occurring at this property. This homeowner has and is facing criminal charges. So depending on the disposition of those charges, she may or may not be back here.
Police have responded to nearly 60 calls between 2017 and 2018 on the drug house, and more this year, including a search where police found methamphetamine and various drug paraphernalia. The RCMP's Major Crimes Unit is investigating the sudden death of a toddler in Brooks. Police say they received a call around 11 a.m. on January 4th about the death of a newborn baby. An autopsy was completed today, but results won't be known for quite some time. Police say there is no risk to the public during the investigation. A Lethbridge family is devastated following the news that they may be torn apart. The parents of 6-year-old Jennifer Ortega were given news by her doctor that she'd been diagnosed with cancer of the kidneys. The issue has caught the attention of an organization called the Love Community and Opportunity International. The family's plight has also caught the eye of Lethbridge City Councillor Blaine Higgin.
It's exciting. We had a moment here where a family came up to us, and through the different channels, we found a family that's in desperate need of help. And the Ortega family that's have some health issues of one of their children. And so throughout all this time, we're trying to bring the community together to get the support services that they need so they can continue and focus on their family.
We know that both parents are now unemployed and are driving back and forth to Calgary for all the medical needs for the youngest daughter of 3 children in their family. We believe that community needs to come together, and we need to support each other, not just at Christmas. We need to support each other all year round. So here we are. We are calling out to the community of Lethbridge on January 11th to join us at the Church of the Latter-day Saints over on Forestry Avenue so that we can come together to cook a month worth of meals for this family.
Jennifer will be meeting with specialists on January 15th in Calgary to discuss next steps for her and her family. With wildfires burning out of control in Australia and a state of emergency going into effect in New South Wales, hundreds of volunteer firefighters are on their way to help battle the blazes. One firefighter from Alberta has been aiding in firefighting efforts for quite some time. Graham Trenholm, an active firefighter with the High River Fire and Foothills Fire Department, has been in Australia helping to battle the blazes for about 6 weeks now.
It's definitely been devastating, and just seeing what it's done to. I was up north in Grafton, and all the animals up there are super skinny. They're just in a bad drought. There's been no food for them. We'll get ahead of it. We'll get some containment lines in, and then we'll get a bad fire day, and it'll spot, it'll jump the lines, it goes for a run, and then all you're doing is you're jumping back, you're doing structure protection, and you're doing what you can there. If you got to pull out, you pull out to a safe area, and then you just keep repeating that when it's those really hot, windy, dry days. And all of Australia right now is 6.3 million hectares, and 3.6 million of that is in New South Wales alone. It's definitely taking its toll, and it's just devastating too to the economy. When the communities are pitching in, they're all helping. They're making meals for fireys in the fire line there. And
to date, the fires have killed 24 people, millions of animals have died, and more than 2,000 homes have been destroyed. Last month, a gunman opened fire at a church in Burkina Faso, killing 14 Christians. Another attack by a suspected Islamist extremist group killed 35 civilians in an attack on a military base. Dr Daniel Cipolla is a Lethbridge pastor and originally from Burkina Faso. He's headed back to the volatile country on a missions trip, and I asked him recently if he was concerned for his safety.
I am very concerned for the safety of everyone in Burkina Faso these days, and indeed, since 2015, this is what has been established, quite a loss of attack on the civilian populations, and in particular, the places of worship are being attacked more and more. And so I wanted to go there and bring my contribution. It is indeed scary, but sometimes God calls us to be in those scary places, to be beacons of hope. Over the years, especially since 1960, we've seen that the quality of life go from just degrading more and more. It goes from being a peaceful country to more and more people running for food because of famine, and now with the political instability, we are noticing more and more instability caused by jihadists that have been coming all the way from Libya, Mauritania, and northern Mali. And there is a significant fear that if nothing is done, the conflict is going to get even worse, and that many people are going to lose their lives.
Burkina Faso is a mostly Muslim country which has descended into serious unrest since 2015. Around 700 people have been killed and more than 560,000 people have been displaced over the past 5 years. While many retail businesses are slowing down after a busy holiday shopping season, gyms, health clubs, and fitness centers are now in their peak period of participation thanks to New Year's resolutions. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with the owners of Anytime Fitness in Lethbridge. They have advice on how to conquer your fitness goals.
If you're a true beginner and just starting down your road to a healthier you, you'll want to keep a few things in mind. First, don't expect too much out of yourself right away.
The most consistent is you need to get in shape, you need to lose weight, you need to change your lifestyle when you walk it for January 1st. A lot of people wait till January 1st too, and I think because all Christmas they're eating and drinking and socializing and enjoying it, they use that day as like their start point.
So how do you conquer the battle of the bulge?
Being specific. So if you create a goal, it's like make a number to it, develop a timeline, develop a way to kind of celebrate the small wins of that victory.
Just like when I quit smoking, it was like, you know, it took you so many times to actually fully get into that quit mode, same as the gym. It takes you so much to develop this habit, this gym, because it's a lifestyle. It's not really, you know, you can't just go one time a month and expect results. You have to continue with it, and the more that you start seeing these results, the happier you get. So
CJ says staying accountable is a big struggle for clients that are new to working out.
If you can either get like a workout partner, maybe get a coach that you know, hire a personal trainer, develop some relationships in the gym and create that accountability, you're going to succeed a lot faster at that goal than if you're doing it by yourself.
Surprisingly, the most common setback to achieving fitness goals?
Motivation. Motivation doesn't stick around forever. We get up one morning, motivation's there, it's high, we're ready to go, we're ready to do that. The next day the motivation might not be there. So really if you can develop that discipline instead of that motivation, you'll be able to stick to it a lot longer.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney met with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland in Calgary earlier today. Her tour through Alberta comes after the Liberals were shut out of our province during the last federal election. Kenney last met with Freeland in November when he asked her for a firm guarantee on completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and to repeal what he sees as unfavorable energy bills. Following her meeting with Kenney, Freeland is set to travel to Grand Prairie and Peace River to meet with officials there. She met with the Edmonton mayor yesterday. The Canadian military is temporarily relocating some soldiers from Iraq to Kuwait. Chief of Defense Staff General Jonathan Vance announced the move earlier today on Twitter. Vance says simply put that we're doing this to ensure their safety and security. It follows the lead of Germany and other allies who've withdrawn some of their troops. Western troops in Iraq have been on high alert since the weekend killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The reaction has been swift and strong since U.S. President Donald Trump ordered a drone attack which killed Soleimani in Iraq. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo defended the targeted killing, saying, "We got it right."
We know what happened at the end of last year in December, ultimately leading to the death of an American. So if you're looking for imminence, you needn't look no further than the days that led up to the strike that was taken against Soleimani. And then you, in addition to that, have what we could clearly see were continuing efforts on behalf of this terrorist to build out a network of campaign activities that were going to lead potentially to the death of many more Americans. It was the right decision. We got it right. The Department of Defense did excellent work, and the president had a entirely legal, appropriate, and a basis, as well as a decision that fit perfectly within our strategy and how to counter the threat of malign activity from Iran more broadly.
40 people have been killed in a stampede as Iranians flock to the burial of Soleimani. The Iranian regime has threatened to retaliate against the United States following the death of Soleimani. They've even threatened to attack the White House. So I asked our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari if this is even possible.
They can make all the threats they want. That's how the Iranian regime operates. A lot of propaganda and a lot of threats. And you know, Helena, you and I speak about this a lot, about the way that the Iranian regime touts their strength, their weapons arsenal, their ability to strike down the enemy. This was a big hit. This is all that this tells me, is that this was a big hit. And they could replace the guy, but they're not going to find anyone who has the strength, the determination, the brutality of Qasem Soleimani.
Catch the entire interview with our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari as we discuss what's next for the U.S. and Iran. That's coming up after business news. As tensions continue to rise between the two countries, U.S. and Iran, interpreters in Afghanistan who served alongside U.S. service members are desperate to get out. As we hear in this next report, some in their country view them as traitors.
Nestled in a quiet North Carolina cul-de-sac, the American dream takes shape. This life is one Zia Ghafouri could only dream of while existing under the crushing grip of the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Now I can save my kids.
In 2014, fearing for their lives, Ghafouri and his family came to the United States on special immigrant visas, compensation for the 14 years he spent as an interpreter for U.S. Special Forces.
If you were working for Americans, you were called infidel.
Ghafouri, a Purple Heart recipient, fought alongside prestigious Green Berets like David Smythe.
They laid their lives on the line for your fellow Americans.
In 2007, Smythe hired this Afghan translator. The Associated Press is concealing his identity for safety reasons.
I put my life at risk and also my family's life in order to help the people of Afghanistan, our country, as well as the U.S. Armed Forces, because they came from too far away to help us.
He applied for his SIV in September, submitting dozens of documents and certificates from the U.S. military, along with this letter from David Smythe describing his interpreter as one of the most loyal and courageous men he's ever met.
If anybody deserves to come to the United States, it's these Afghan interpreters.
A new defense policy bill has opened up the door to 4,000 more SIVs for Afghans, but 19,000 are still waiting for the State Department to decide their fate.
I don't think it'll be long before the Taliban takes over Afghanistan again. And if that happens, then these guys are all targets and their entire families. So really, we need to move with a sense of urgency.
Are you hiding?
Ghafouri is juggling a family of 6 and a convenience store job, all while running his newly formed nonprofit, the Interpreting Freedom Foundation, which he launched to help his fellow interpreters navigate the SIV process and settle in the United States.
I don't want somebody else faced with those problems that I have been faced.
This man's heart beats in 2 places, his homeland and America, an open door he hopes to see his brothers soon walk through. Sarah Blake Morgan, The Associated Press.
Many members of Team Canada returned home after winning gold at the World Junior Hockey Championship in the Czech Republic. Canada defeated Russia 4-3 in the final.
It feels unbelievable. It's just hasn't really sunk in yet. Obviously, it's about a day ago now, but it's just unbelievable. I think just the way our group kind of dealt with adversity. I think obviously it was some adversity early on. I think from the start we wanted to get better every day, and I thought we did that extremely well. Obviously it showed in the finals.
On the bench, I was thinking like I'm going to get one more shift out here and I'm going to score, and that's just what I was thinking the whole period. And luckily coach called me up, and I just had a feeling I was going to score. And all the staff on my team were telling me I was going to score pretty much every game, and I came back to the locker room after every game, thinking I didn't score that game, but I knew it was coming, and I just kind of stuck with it, and I can't even explain how proud I am.
Congrats again going out to Team Canada. Very proud of the boys. It looked like hockey weather today, didn't it? Lots of snow and icy roads. Be careful if you're out driving. The snow will continue and the temperatures will begin to plummet over the next few days. Weather details are coming up shortly. We had lots of snow and cooler temperatures today. Tonight, more snow developing with a low near -4. Tomorrow, a mixture of sun and cloud with a high expected near 2 degrees. The mercury plummets to -14 on Thursday under a mainly cloudy sky. Friday, warming up to -2. A cold and snowy weekend is shaping up. Saturday, more flurries expected with a high of only -19. Sunday, snow again with the temperature dropping to -21. Monday, a good chance of flurries again with a high of only -22. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is -2 and an average low of -14. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 2002 at 16 degrees, and the record low, a chilly -36 in 1989. Sunrise was at 8:28, sunset at 4:48. Looking at tomorrow's national forecast now, expect rain and a high of 7 degrees in Victoria, a good chance of showers and 4 for Vancouver. Light flurries and -9 for Calgary tomorrow. Periods of snow and -11 for Edmonton. Snow and -11 degrees as well is expected in Regina. Snow and -12 for Saskatoon. Flurries and -15 degrees for Winnipeg on Wednesday. A chance of the white stuff and a high of -3 for Toronto. Snow and a high of -1 for both Ottawa and Montreal tomorrow. Lots of snow for the Maritime provinces as well. Flurries and -5 for Fredericton, New Brunswick on Wednesday. Heavy snow and a high of 0 for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Snow and -1 for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, you can also expect snow and a high near 0. Canada's merchandise trade deficit narrowed to $1.1 billion last month. It was mainly due to a CN rail strike which halted shipments across the country. Stats Canada says the deficit improved from a revised $1.6 billion in October as merchandise exports declined 1.4%. Imports, meanwhile, were down 2.4%. The federal agency says the declines coincided with disruptions in Canadian rail transportation during the month. Combined, Canada's trade deficit with the world for goods and services was $2.6 billion for November. The Toronto Real Estate Board says a 17.4% jump in home sales in December capped a surge in activity in the second half of last year. The average selling price was just under $838,000. That is up 11.9% from the same month last year. The board does say, however, that 2019 sales were in line with annual medians for the decade. The increased sales helped push the average selling price for the year up by 4% to $819,300. A New Zealand company is showing a creative new way to get moving on water. At the CES Technology Show, the group says all you need is some muscle power and an electric engine.
So the Manta 5 Hydrofoil XE1 is the world's first hydrofoil bike. It utilizes e-bike technology to assist you as you're planing along the surface, and then underneath the water you've got a hydrofoils and a propeller which gives you the lift and the thrust to be able to plane on the surface of the water. So we set out to replicate the cycling experience on water, and the XE1 is our first version. So for the first 5 years of research and development, it was all manual, but we wanted to extend the ride time and open the market to a wider pool of people. So our first product is XE1, which allows for electric technology to be able to assist you as you're riding, very much like an e-bike. So there's a bit of mastery involved to learning it, but we sort of enjoy that whole mastery. The first part to learn is around launching, so you can either launch from a beach or from a pontoon or the back of a boat, and that's the easiest way to learn. Most people can get up within 3 or 4 turns, and then it's all about learning to be able to actually turn and carve up. And then the last one that you can learn, which is a bit more mastery, is to be able to relaunch from deep water. We call it a submerged launch. So if you've fallen off in deep water, you're actually able to come out of the water and get planing again.
China-based luxury car maker Mbyte has brought the production model of the electric SUV vehicle to North America. The Mbyte promises a range of up to 325 miles on a single charge and will cost around $45,000 when it comes to North America in 2021.
In a world where Tesla has prominently taken its place during the past years, people are constantly telling me that they are ready for an alternative option in choosing a new premium electric vehicle. And I believe that Mbyte is ready to be that alternative.
I can easily go in and select Las Vegas.
Here we go, cool.
There's a whole bunch of different movies, content. Again, this is just a sample. What's great about this is while you're parked, you can actually watch a real live video.
Nice looking vehicle. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up almost 63 points on the day to 17,168. The Dow was down almost 120 points to 28,583. The S&P 500 was down 9 points to 3237, and the Nasdaq was down almost 3 points on the day to 9,068. Oil was down 57 cents to 62.70 per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to $2.15. Gold was up 73 cents to $15.75 per ounce, and silver was up almost 4 cents to $18.45 an ounce. Wheat is at $229 per metric ton, barley's at $232, canola's at $4.69, and corn is at $282 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 75 cents on the day to $127.25. Feeder cattle were down $1.53 to $147.28, and lean hogs were up 6 cents to $69.35. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 76.90 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the results are in from the Christmas and New Year's Eve check stops in Lethbridge. Police say of the 600 vehicles stopped, 5 people were charged with impaired driving, 4 for alcohol and 1 for drug impairment. There were also 16 license suspensions and 19 vehicles seized, along with 31 tickets issued. Tensions continue to escalate between the Trump administration and Iran since the death of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. An $80 million bounty has been put on the head of the U.S. president. Coming up, our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari gives us her thoughts next on what is next for the U.S. and Iran. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Lethbridge residents are invited to an open house Thursday, January 9th between 5 and 8 p.m. at the Westminster Hall. This meeting is to give residents an opportunity to learn about future redevelopment policies and to provide feedback. Topics will include secondary suites, multifamily housing, building and site design, transportation, and utilities and servicing. Kid-friendly activities will be available. For more information, visit lethbridge.ca or call 311. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or email lethbridgelegalguidance@telus.net. Looking for a fun place where you and your kids can play? Come for a fun family night to the Family Center in downtown Lethbridge, Thursday evenings from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. beginning January 9th. Me and My Family promotes learning through play and provides a safe place for kids to explore through physical activity, imagination, and creativity. For more information, visit famcenter.ca. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Things are getting even more intense in the Middle East since a U.S. drone took out the head of Iran's Quds force in Iraq, Qassem Soleimani. Joining me now to talk about it is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, Iraq's parliament has called for the expulsion of U.S. troops from the country, and Trump has said he will sanction Iraq if those U.S. troops are forced to leave.
You know, Iraq was caught off guard with this attack. You know, Iraq and many other countries in the Middle East have become a kind of a war grounds for other proxy fights that are not their own. In the case of Iraq, they have been, at this point, involved in this tit-for-tat exchange between the Iranians and the United States. And now they want to just go back to life as usual, and they don't even remember what that was like, a time where, whether it was remembering fondly, ironically, a time under Saddam Hussein, or even before, you know, when these foreign troops were not always a part of the equation. Right now, it's going to be impossible for them to get the Iranian forces out. They've become part of the parliament. They've become part of their governing system. They have, you know, whether they're you know, insurgencies or otherwise, they're conducting their business from areas within Iraq. And, you know, to ask the U.S. to leave, they're probably just trying to prevent more of an escalation from happening on their territory. You know, and of course the United States is kind of baffled by this, saying we're there to help you almost. If we're striking the Iranian forces that are the bad guys on your territory, well, we're still getting rid of the bad guys on your territory. So I think, you know, the U.S. has said since this report that they are willing to pull out to prevent an escalation or to, you know, disturb the Iraqis, for lack of a better word. But we shall see how this will go forward. It's going to be very difficult to rid Iraq of these foreign forces.
The Iranian general replacing Soleimani is vowing revenge, Lisa. In fact, an $80 million bounty has apparently been put on Trump's head, and Iran is threatening to attack the White House. Is that even possible?
Yeah, well, they can make all the threats they want. That's how the Iranian regime operates. A lot of propaganda and a lot of threats. And, you know, Helena, you and I speak about this a lot, about the way that the Iranian regime touts their strength, their weapons arsenal, their ability to strike down the enemy. This was a big hit. This is all that this tells me, is that this was a big hit. And they could replace the guy, but they're not going to find anyone who has the strength, the determination, the brutality of Qasem Soleimani. And of course, this guy was replaced in hours with the new guy, General Ghani, who is probably next in line. But, you know, this guy is going to be a figurehead in comparison to what Qasem Soleimani was to the Iranian regime, extension of the Iranian regime in proxy wars. You know, and of course, they're going to threaten retaliation because they don't want to appear to be weak. This guy was called the shadowy general because no one can catch up to him. He was such a smart guy, and he was able to outwit and you know, kind of outsmart any sources that were looking for him in recent years. And I've been covering him for many years, so this was not the first time I'd heard of him, and the fact that he was caught was more surprising to me than anything else. But yeah, the Iranian regime will threaten revenge, and what it will look like, we don't know. In the past hour or so, news broke that the Iranian president threatened President Trump, saying, remember the number 290. Now, what that means is anyone's guess, but I think the intelligence apparatuses here in the United States will get on that and start looking up what that could potentially mean. But I think everyone's on guard. I know here in Los Angeles, it's been announced that a lot of the the more prominent sites have 24-hour patrols, and people are on guard. I think in New York City, friends were telling me that they keep announcing on the subways, if you see something, say something. So I think people are worried that there will be retaliation, but the fact that these threats are being made is nothing new.
Iran says it will also target U.S. military sites. Lisa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there's a real likelihood that Iran will try to hit the U.S. troops. Now, since the killing of Soleimani, Iran has ripped up the 2015 nuclear deal. Iran removed uranium enrichment limits in the aftermath of the Soleimani strike.
Yeah, well, there was no nuclear deal to begin with, so the fact that they are not complying now as a result of the Soleimani news, I don't really buy that. They were not following the uranium limits on the nuclear deal at all. I mean, look, let's rewind and ask why President Trump withdrew from that deal to begin with in May of 2018. I think President Trump was the candidate who ran on ripping up that deal. So I think that this has been a long time coming. It's nothing new that they now announced that we will not comply with the terms of the nuclear deal. That's first and foremost. Secondly, I think now we will see attacks on, or at least attempts to attack, these military sites. Iran has set itself up to win proxy wars. They are not in a position to be in a full-fledged World War III with a power like the United States. They don't have the means, they don't have the sources, they don't have the weaponry. They are under sanctions. And back at home, let's remember, they have a very vulnerable situation with a majority of the 80 million people who live in that country being very much disenchanted with the government and being out on the streets protesting their government. So we're looking at what the Iranian government does have at their disposal, and that is a lot of good setups in the region. That could be in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Gaza. They could try to take, some Israeli retaliation out on the Israelis, for example. In Latin America as well. I mean, they can go after our posts in Latin America. They're set up very nicely in places like Venezuela and Bolivia, in Peru, in Argentina even. So, I think their tentacles are far-reaching. Their attempt to set up, stations in different parts of the world has been quite successful. But for them to fight a full-fledged war, I think it's going to be less probable.
As tensions grow between the United States and the Middle East, Lisa, Nancy Pelosi says the House will vote to limit Trump's powers on Iran. Is that a smart idea?
Very, very upsetting to watch the infighting here in the United States in the aftermath of the killing of Soleimani. We've always said that terrorism is not a partisan issue. It's not something that we can disagree on, that this guy was a monster and that he was responsible for the death of hundreds of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Syrians, Iraqis, and others. He ordered the deaths of the 1,500 protesters in Iran that were killed in recent protests that we saw on the streets over there. So this guy was a butcher. He's a terrorist. He's an awful human being. And the fact that there are two opinions about his killing here in the United States for political purposes is quite sad. It looks sad to our enemies that we can't even agree on the fact that just because this president, the president that some in this country don't like, ordered this attack, that we can't be factually honest about the fact that he should have been killed. If any president, regardless of affiliation, had the opportunity, this man had to be taken out, and the planet is going to be a better place for it. Now, Nancy Pelosi and others call this, a far-reaching act by President Trump, that this was an act of war and that he had to have permission, or else now needs to provide evidence that Soleimani was planning future attacks all you need to do is look at his past attacks and know that this man was up to no good. He was planning present, future attacks on U.S. Assets in the region. He was planning for more deaths in Iraq, in Syria. And look, there's a reason why he was there. You know, people talk about him as the second in command in Iran. Well, if he were the second in command in Iran, he would have been in Iran. He was in the region for a reason. He was exporting terror. That is this Iranian regime's #1 export, is to export terror and terrorism and suicide bombings and other types of attacks. So, you know, again, to have Americans here not understand the severity of the situation is awful. And I have to add here, this is not an angle that you frequently see, is that I'm getting videos out of Iran and photos out of Iran with Iranians celebrating and rejoicing. They have cakes on it that say, "Way to go, Trump," thanking President Trump for taking out this guy. They realize, a large percentage, I should say, of the population realizes that this is their money that is going into terrorism and to fund regional activities that the government is funding. They're not happy with their government. They're not happy about the sanctions. They're not happy that life has become so difficult under the sanctions, and this is not where they want their money to go.
Let's talk about other countries around the world and their reaction to the Soleimani death. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Britain will not lament his death. He says the UK, France, and Germany must refrain from violence. And Pakistan has stressed neutrality, even though a big rally was held to protest Soleimani's killing.
It's very interesting that we're going to have two opinions about this, but for the Europeans, this is a very awkward position to be in. Why? We've talked about this a lot. Why? The Europeans do not want to let go of that last strand, that last thread that may push them back into a deal with the Iranians. Why? Because of economic purposes. They see a very lucrative and promising trade partner in the Iranians, and they don't want to give that up. But the facts paint a different story. It makes it very inconvenient and very difficult for them to stay in any sort of agreement with the Iranian government. When reports come out from the UN and other bodies saying that the Iranians never were complying with the nuclear deal, when things like this happen and a leader of terror is taken out like this, it's very difficult for the Europeans to come and say, well, this was a bad move on the part of the US. But what we do see is a leader in Boris Johnson. He is obviously very anti-terrorism. He's more obviously conservative. He's a kind of an about face from what we've seen coming out of the UK, especially from Corbyn and his ilk. But now we have an opportunity to have a leader of the European world to say that this is not the way it's going to be, and we're not going to side on the wrong. We're not going to take the wrong side in this. France is probably, France has said, I should say, that they want to see a de-escalation of violence, which is a lot of those pleasantries that we hear coming out of Europe. But let me tell you one thing. If there's something that's been proven in Europe over the last decade, is that having this lax attitude about terrorism has backfired, literally, figuratively. It has backfired to the point where there have been massive terror attacks in European countries. They will continue to be, because they are the insurgencies and the lone wolves are embedded within their society, and they should know better than to side with terrorists at this point.
Since the killing of Soleimani, there have been rocket attacks, including 3 more in Baghdad.
Right, there's been a lot of reports of attacks that have been almost the aftershock of what's going on. The U.S. striking targets and the U.S.'s targets being struck. This is nothing new. We're going to hear about this. And people ask me, since Friday, it's been the #1 question that I'm asked. Will this lead to war? Will we see World War III spring up from this? Will there be a war between Iran and the United States? And my guess is that this will be a continuation of asymmetrical warfare, proxy fighting, targeted attacks on bases and other assets, and that's exactly what we're seeing, right? Baghdad being the hot spot, that's where this started, that's where it's going to end, and it's more of the same. And Hal, you allow us to speak more, or I should give a platform to a lot of these attacks, whether they be in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria. On a weekly basis, we talk about this. But for other news outlets, this is something new. But I should stress that these proxy attacks, these target attacks, are nothing new. They happen all the time. And this is the way that Iran has been, again, exerting its force and spreading its power within the region for the past at least 4 or 5 years, if not more. But more, I would say, more heavily heavily the last 4 or 5 years. So I think we're going to see a lot more of these attacks, targeted attacks, and proxy warfare.
And speaking of attacks, Lisa, a military base in Kenya used by U.S. servicemen and women was attacked by AlShabaab.
Yes, we don't want to take our eyes off of Africa. We talk about this often as well. Al-Shabaab being a offshoot of Al-Qaeda, remember that group? Still alive and well and growing in places that we wouldn't think of, including the African continent. So we do have U.S. assets there. Again, nobody talks about Africa, but we have U.S. assets there, and they are very often targeted, in this case targeted by Al-Shabaab, who is growing in power, growing in visibility. And you know, Al-Qaeda used to once be the terror group that would sit back to launch a 9/11 type of large-scale attacks. But they learned from ISIS, and now we see more of these one-offs, or, you know, in this case, even if you take out a couple of people or dozen people, it's considered a successful, victorious terrorist attack, and we're seeing a lot more of that on the African continent, a place to watch out.
And some more news coming out of Venezuela. Maduro has launched a takeover of the country's legislature.
Yeah, it's sad to see that Maduro is grabbing onto power once again. How close we were to seeing him really lose power, really almost be kicked out of the country. We saw Guaido, the opposition leader, rise up very quickly, be supported not only by the U.S. and the neighboring countries, by the people in Venezuela as well. But that very quickly faded with Maduro taking over, arresting a lot of people who were close to the opposition leader, basically going after the families of the military personnel that defected. He made it very difficult for this revolution to be successful. And now, as you said, taking more power back in legislation and in the judiciary, and it looks like he's back in charge.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Our next guest is Dr. Daniel Cipolla, pastor of Miss City Church here in Lethbridge and founder of Bridges of Hope humanitarian organization, also author of the book, The All for Nothing Marriage, Why Your Marriage Will Kill You Before Death Do You Part. That's quite interesting. Welcome to BCN, Daniel.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
That's quite the interesting title, The All for Nothing Marriage. Tell me a bit about it. How'd you come up with that name?
Well, I have experienced marriage in a very unique way, being in a cross-cultural marriage. First of all, I came to the marriage thinking that I know everything and I'm going to teach my wife how to obey me, how to... You've been married for 30 years, so you know exactly what happened.
It's
so
teamwork.
I just thought I had an idea of marriage before I got married, and then now after being there 20 years, I understood marriage as being now a different thing. I realized all of a sudden that the only thing that can make a marriage work and the only environment that is safe, healthy, and helpful is a place where each of the couple die to themselves.
And so, communication is really important as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but
right?
Most of the time that's what they say is communication, but part of it, actually the bigger deal is actually die to yourself. I just say, why, I got married to my wife, in the beginning I say, well, can you serve me? And I realized that I get ticked off because she's not serving me the way I want her to serve.
So put your spouse's needs before your own?
Oh, yeah, my brother. You have to put her need before your own.
And, well, yes, dear. We learned that at an early age, do we not?
Yes, dear. You learned that. I did not learn that one. So, but that's part of the challenges we found. So when we got married, I realized very quickly, the only way for me to get out of this marriage and to get something of worth from this marriage is to die to myself. So my wife and I really wrote this together. In fact, my kids were very helpful in it. And we realized we have to die to yourself to make a marriage work.
Now, lesson 1 in your book is called Sometimes the Map is Wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us sometimes have unrealistic expectations going into a marriage. Tell me about the map. What does that map look like?
Well, I think in terms of marriage, before coming to marriage, they tell you, you have to actually make sure you find somebody who is compatible to you, somebody who have the same value, somebody who have the same purpose as you.
So opposites attract. We've heard that expression before. Maybe long term, that's not the solution.
It's not. That's what I'm finding.
Yeah.
Is not the solution. So what happened is that you think that you're compatible, you get married, and suddenly you realize, oh my goodness, with the seasons of marriage changing, you realize that you cannot operate on compatibility anymore. And so in my journey, I found that many people, they are very compatible, right, but they're happily divorced.
Now, you say what creates a phenomenal marriage as well in your book is something called primary love.
That's right.
Can you explain what that is?
Yes, that's, I think I drew a lot from the scripture when they talk about agape. That kind of love that you give without expecting anything, unconditional love. And I find that the kind of love that is required in the marriage is a kind of giving of yourself unconditionally without expecting anything in return.
Sometimes couples like to point the finger at each other. It's your fault we're in this situation. No, it's your fault. But you talk about the 100 to none principle. Can you explain?
Yes, that's really true. I think one of the things I really encounter in marriage have been, well, I want you to give to me, I'm expecting a lot. So the 100 to none method is actually a principle where I just say, I'm going to give everything that is in me, I'm just going to give it to you. Whatever you give to me, I'm prepared to receive. But my love to you is a gift with no condition to it. So it used to be, some people say, well, marriage is about a 50-50 proposition. I bring 50%, you bring 50%. The new method I'm suggesting is that, how about, let's make it 100 to none. I give you everything I've got, and I expect nothing. The day I begin putting expectation on my marriage, expecting of you and demanding and putting demand on you, is the day I really lose my marriage.
Now, you make a statement about marriage that sometimes messes with the traditional view of marriage. You challenge us not to find the right person to love, but is to love the person you find. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, this is drawing from the idea of compatibility, that I had to find somebody who is compatible to me, meaning somebody who shares my same values, somebody who believes the same thing that I believe. But with the seasons of life, things change. The question is that when my belief change, how do we do compatibility? And I think the most important thing for people is to begin loving the person that you found, the person that God brought to you. Not begin to say and accuse like Adam and Eve and say, it's a wife that you placed before me, in front of me. It's she caused me to sin. But actually to focus more on, how do I create space in my heart to love? Because love is the solution to marriage. It's not compatibility that is a solution.
What do you say to a couple who's been married maybe 10, 20, or even 30 years and say, I love this person, but I'm no longer in love with that person? How do you respond to them?
Well, I tell them the most important thing that they're missing is that is connection. Because in the relationship, sometimes we get caught up with all the busyness of life. I got to do this. I got to get the kids to school. I got to do that, and so much that we lose track of our spouse. We are not even present in our marriage.
So date nights are still very important, isn't it?
Date nights are very important, but actually just taking time to just be and be present. Sometimes we just don't have time to be next to someone else. We don't have to say anything. We don't have to fix anything. We just have to be with somebody. And I believe the idea of connecting to one another, if the enemy wants to actually disrupt our connection to one another, and he'll bring busyness, and now we get so caught up with too much that we do, and we don't even take time to look at each other and to say, honey, how are you doing?
How important is listening when it comes to the long-term success of a relationship?
And that is actually one of the biggest things, empathic listening. Because in this world of noise, high noise, we are too caught up with trying to explain ourselves which is educating, and which is one of the things you notice in people who have addiction. They want to explain themselves. They don't want to take time to hear, to seek to understand. Like St. Francis said, Lord, help me that I may seek to understand instead of being understood. So listening is a process whereby I yield to the other. I create space for their presence to count more than anything. So tell me more about you. So, and as I seek more to understand, and as I understand more my spouse, actually connection is created. The gel and the glue that is required for life manifests, and our relationship grows and become a tree of life.
Many marriages encounter problems along the way as we go through life, the peaks and valleys, as we know.
Right.
Now, you say in your book as well that sometimes as a man or a woman, you shouldn't necessarily solve the problem right away, but just work more on that connection, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. Yes, that's very important. Consider this, 87% or more of the problem in the marriage cannot be solved.
Really?
They cannot be solved. And in fact, the more you try to solve them, the more problem you create. Maybe the Lord call us to live with problem and to be in the presence of them and to not be intimidated by them. So I say, instead of focusing on trying to solve your problem, focus on connecting. Because I know lots of people who have solved their problem, the problem in their marriage, and they're happily divorced too. So I say, for a while, put aside and set aside all the problems in your marriage, set aside all the bickering, and just focus on connecting. Yes, your husbands have some issue. Yes, your wife has some issue, but let's not focus on that. Just, and especially when people come for coaching, again, everybody is focused on solving their problem. And I say, for a while, we're going to make a contract. For the next 4 weeks, you will actually put your problem. I even have them list all their problems, and they give it to me. I put it in an envelope. I say, we're going to store it, and we're going to leave it aside, and we're going to work on your connection. When you begin this, you will be shocked at the progress, the relationship, the quality of your relationship. Every person I've had across my desk, their relationship, they get better and better. I have 4 couples who finished reading this book. Some of them were just divorcing. They say, we're not divorcing anymore. Because they made the problem the issue. And I say, no. Your biggest problem is love, is connection. It's not the kids not waking up on time. It's not your spouse. It's just connect. God made us people who are supposed to gel and to be one another.
Why is it that sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on our marriage?
Wow.
Why do you think that is?
That's education. Because we are taught, we are told you have to get something. That's what the book says. It's not about getting. It's about giving away. So what's your gift? My love for my spouse is a gift. It's not required. It's my gift to her. Her love for me is a gift. By the way, I say to her, even sex is a gift. It's not required. It's not required. I receive it as a gift. And so it doesn't demand.
But it helps with that connection. That intimacy is so vital to a successful marriage,
But it's not required. It's her gift to me. But we are taught you have to get this, you have to get that. And I say, who told you that? And then we end up demanding more and more and more and more. We suffocate our spouse. And sometimes a lot of marriages, when I see, they're miserable. The people in them are miserable. I feel so sorry for them. I've seen at least maybe this past couple of years, maybe a couple hundred couples. It's not easy for people.
You know what's interesting too is I've seen couples sometimes, they go on vacations apart, separate.
That's right.
And they've been married for 30, 40, 50 years.
That's right.
I thought vacations you're supposed to go out together as a couple all the time, but they said, no, we're very happy when we go our separate ways sometimes for 1 or 2 weeks, and then we get back together again.
Yes, and there's a chapter in the book about that there are some people, they actually, a great friend of mine, that's what they do. He goes for a week, and then she comes 3 days before the end of the weeks, and she begins, so they can take it together for 2 days, and then he leaves, and she takes a week. And some people, they find that this works for the rhythm of their relationship. Certainly, it worked for them. They've been married for over 40 years. And so it's just find the rhythm that works for you and operate in that and stay faithful and be to your own self, be truthful. And I think there are different models of relationship that works for people, and we just have to find the one that works for us.
Now, your last chapter, you talk about why mom was right about marriage.
Wow.
Can you briefly explain why mom was right?
Yeah. Well, I barely know my mother. When I was born during a great moment of famine, which she ended up dying in the process. But my mom, I was the fruit of her second marriage. In her first marriage, she had to flee in the night because of violence, and there were quite a lot of things in that marriage that made it impossible for her to.
And that was in Burkina Faso?
That was in Burkina Faso, and she got married probably around 13 years of age. She was very young in those days, and so she fled in the night and to save her life. But she just had a baby, so she ended up naming her firstborn a baby. She's still alive, which is basically it's an expression which say there is no good home.
Wow.
And there is no good home. And then in her second marriage, she thought it would be better to my dad, and she encountered some of the same problem. And then she named the firstborn of her second marriage the word to, which means there is no good home except perseverance. And so by that, my mother made a statement that if you are looking for the perfect home, you won't find it. The only place that you will find peace is a place, the place of perseverance, the place of love. You know, like 1 Corinthians 13, love is patience. And she find that she won't, her life will be more fulfilled if she remain committed in the marriage that she received, invest the best that she has in it, and just give the very best that she has. And that's why I spoke about her story. And she lived a very, very miserable life, very painful, and yet she remained faithful till she died before the age of 30.
Dr. Daniel Cipolla, Senior Pastor with Mid-City Church in Lethbridge and author of the book, The All for Nothing Marriage, available on Amazon. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.